Hi, good evening. Welcome everyone. I'm Faye Rosenfeld, and I have the great privilege of being the Vice President of Public Programs here at the New York Public Library. The New York Public Library is an institution that stands on the front lines of democracy. We ensure that everyone has free and equal access to books, information, and ideas, to all the essential knowledge that fuels human curiosity and creativity, helps build strong and healthy communities, and fosters an informed citizenry that is capable of distinguishing fact from fiction and fully engaging in civic life. Every day in every one of our 92 locations around the city and our sister branches in Brooklyn and Queens, we honor and perpetuate the love and joy of reading that is so vividly and beautifully captured in the extraordinary book we are celebrating this evening, A Velocity of Being, Letters to a Young Reader, edited by Mariah Popova and Claudia Zoe Bedrick. We are deeply grateful to Maria and Claudia and all the contributors, not only for the years of work that went into producing this beautiful collection, but also for their extraordinary act of generosity in donating all of the proceeds from the book to the public library systems of New York City. Your generosity will help make it possible for us to continue providing essential services to the millions of New Yorkers and people around the world who use our resources and trust us as their partners in the lifelong pursuit of knowledge. On behalf of the library, all New Yorkers, and library users everywhere, thank you. So, in a moment, I'm going to ask Maria and Claudia to come to the stage to introduce tonight's program. But before I do that, if you'll indulge me, I'm going to make one final plug for the library, and more particularly for this thing, the library card. This card is your key to unlocking the tens of millions of items that are waiting for you to explore in our collections. So I'm going to ask for a quick show of hands. How many people in this room have a library card? Okay. That's really great. So for the handful that don't, or maybe if for those of you who haven't used your card in a while, here are just a few of the things that you can do with a library card. You can read The New Yorker online, or hundreds of other newspapers and journals. You can reserve a culture pass, which will get you free admission to dozens of museums and cultural institutions in New York. You can stream thousands of films using our Canopy service. You can learn a foreign language, 71 foreign languages to be exact. You can download thousands of ebooks and audiobooks using our Simply E app. And of course, you can check out a book face-to-face with an actual wonderful librarian whose job it is to help you find the books and materials that matter to you. So I hope if you don't already have a card, you'll go to nypl.org/library card to sign up for one, or you can head into our Mid-Manhattan branch, which is located temporarily in this building right around the corner from here, or to any branch, and to get one on the spot. And if you hurry, you will still be able to get one of these special limited edition cards, which are emblazoned with the words "knowledge is power," which are truly words to remember and hold on to at this particular moment in our history. So, I hope you'll all come back in your printed programs. You'll see some of the events coming up in the next 6 weeks, and you'll find information also to how to sign up for our newsletter if you're not already on the list. So on behalf of the New York Public Library, I want to thank you all for coming tonight, and now please join me in welcoming our hosts, Maria Popova and Claudia Bernick.
Good evening. My name is Maria Popova, and it is astonishing and quite surreal to be here and to see this, to see all of you and all of us, and most of all, this cluster of atoms that was once just an idea. I think if anyone had told us that it would take 8 years, that's 16 years of cumulative woman hours for me and Claudia, and countless hours for our nearly 250 contributors, I don't know if we would have done it. But blessed is the naivete of the idealistic beginner. So here we are. This project actually has a very improbable beginning. I had just moved to New York and had a desk at a co-working space at 10 J Street in Brooklyn. And at that point, my site, Brain Pickings, was a few years old, and I had ended up writing quite a bit about picture books because I'd come to believe, as I still do, that the best of them are not really books for children, but they're these exquisite distillations of philosophies for living that get at the most foundational, fundamental truths about what it means to live a beautiful, inspired, meaningful, noble life. And so one day, this package arrives at my desk, and it contains 3 picture books by a French artist and illustrator, and a note from a woman named Claudia. And it says something like, "I sense a kindred spirit and sensibility, and I just think you would enjoy these." And so I start leafing through them, and I am instantly enchanted. They're unlike anything I had seen before. They were not sugar-coated like a lot of contemporary American children's books. They were not these kind of dark, moralistic fairy tales of my childhood in Eastern Europe. They were just profound, poetic, beautiful, really, really soulful books. And I wanted to know more about where they came from, who they came from. I turned the envelope. It says the sender's name is Enchanted Lion Books, and the address is 20 J Street. And I'm like, wait a minute. So I write to this Claudia, and I say, hey, thank you for the books. I really loved them. I'm actually next door. Would you like to have tea? And so we did, and very quickly, we realized that we had actually been orbiting each other's lives for much longer, unbeknownst to both of us. When I was a child in Eastern Europe during communism, Claudia was traveling through Central and Eastern Europe as young graduate faculty from NYU doing, I guess, a kind of cultural missionary work, going into libraries and universities and trying to bridge the intellectual isolation that the Iron Curtain had put us behind. And on her travels, she would stop by local bookstores and seek out the most beautiful, unusual children's books that she could find, including, I'm sure, a lot of the ones that my grandmother, who, by the way, is watching the live stream tonight from Bulgaria, was reading to me. Thank you for the one applause for my grandmother. And so, at the time that we first met for tea, that was also the time when ebooks had just become a thing, and social media was this wild west, and the future of the written word felt kind of uncertain. And I think both of us were really concerned about how young people would come to feel about literature. Claudia's son Elias was at the time, 8, 9, he was young. And I just kept wondering, I mean, what would it mean to grow up in a world dominated by sound bites and not by stories? And would young people lose the ability and the willingness to take that essential leap of faith by which an author picks you up and takes you somewhere new and unfamiliar and maybe unfathomable, and then safely deposits you back into your world, but it's a world transformed, which of course is what books do and soundbite culture does not. And so I thought, what would be a way to encourage young people to consider reading as something that is essential to building character, building a full life? And I thought, well, maybe if we show them that people they really admire in the world today have become who they are in large part because of a life of reading, maybe that would do the trick. And because I love letters as a medium, I spend a lot of my time in archives reading old, lost letters from long dead people that somehow speak to us today. I thought maybe this medium would be perfect because the best letters are intimate. They're a conversation between two people, but they speak a kind of universal language, and they're also of a time, but they reach across time to the timeless and the eternal. And so I suggested we do this book of letters from the most interesting people we could reach today, very different people, scientists, artists, poets, philosophers, entrepreneurs. And Claudia said, but it has to have art in it because she's devoted her life to the power of word and image together. And I thought that was great. And we started out making this book with the idea of getting original contributions, original letters from interesting people we could find, and pairing each of them with one of the great picture book artists of our time to do original art in response to the letter. And from the very beginning, we decided, as Faye mentioned, to donate all the proceeds to the public library system, because we really believe that equal access to the human knowledge, wisdom, beauty that is in books is one of the baseboards of democracy. And so thank you, New York Public Library. So we started out thinking, okay, we'll do 50 letters. That's a lot. It's a lot of work. It's plenty for a book. And then here we are, 8 years later, with 121 letters and 121 pieces of original art for this book. And among them are letters from scientists like Jane Goodall and Janna Levin, artists like Marina Abramovich and Debbie Millman, poets like Elizabeth Alexander, Mary Oliver, Sarah Kay, entrepreneurs like Richard Branson and Tim Ferriss. We have Italy's first woman in space. We have a Holocaust survivor who just turned 100. And also people from fields that we might misperceive as competitive with books, who are actually tremendous readers. So web and technology pioneers like Cory Doctorow and Kevin Kelly, radio pioneers like Jad Abumrad, TV pioneers like Shonda Rhimes, who, by the way, named all 3 of her daughters after some of her favorite authors, Emerson, Harper, and Beckett. So all of us, in the contributors to the book, had to write a tiny little bio to go with each letter to kind of tell children who we are and what this is. And in mine, I mentioned that I reread The Little Prince once a year, every year. And every time I find in it some level of beauty and truth that seems perfectly tailored to whatever I'm struggling with at that particular point in life. So this year, when I reread it, what spoke to me was something I had loved the first time I read and had kind of completely forgotten about, which is the dedication. In part because this year I've had to write 2 dedications of my own, one for this book and one for a longer book that I wrote. So I want to read it to you. This is what Antoine de Saint-Exupéry wrote. The year is 1943. He is in America. He is French. France is under Nazi occupation. It says, "To Leon Worth, I ask the indulgence of the children who may read this book for dedicating it to a grown-up. I have a serious reason. He is the best friend I have in the world. I have another reason. This grown-up understands everything, even books about children. I have a third reason. He lives in France when he is hungry and cold. He needs cheering up. If all these reasons are not enough, I will dedicate the book to the child from whom this grown-up grew. All grown-ups were once children, although few of them remember it. And so I correct my dedication to Leon Worth when he was a little boy." I love this. And what I love about the letters in A Velocity of Being is that they are addressed to children, but they're also addressed to the inner child that each of us carries and lives with and, in a sense, answers to. And they're also written in the language of children, which is a language of absolute sincerity that is so countercultural in our age of cynicism. And I'm just so enormously grateful to the 242 contributors we have, many of whom are with us tonight, both on stage and amongst you in the seats. I just want to thank you so much for giving your time and talent and thought and life stories to this. So thank you. And most of all, I want to thank Claudia, not only for what she's doing with Enchanted Lion, which to me publishes some of the most intelligent, imaginative, daring, courageous children's books in the world today, but for pushing and believing in this project for 8 years, and 8 years of life that have not been easy. I think you take any 8-year slice of any human life, and there's so much strife and struggle, and the ability to hold on to ideas and ideals in those moments, to me, is such a triumph of character and of creative vision. So thank you, Claudia, for modeling that for me as a friend, and also for our project, which wouldn't exist without that quality of yours. And with that, please welcome Claudia Bedrick.
I made some notes. Usually I speak off the cuff, but I didn't think this was the venue for me to do that. So I made a few notes. Good evening and welcome once again. It's an honor to be here and wonderful to see so many familiar, beloved, and new faces gathered here together in celebration of a book that represents such a beautiful ethical community of written and visual voices praising, defending, arguing for, and attesting to all the wondrous riches that come to us through a life of reading. We have a terrific evening ahead, so I'll be brief. With the book 8 years in the making, there are many people to thank. I first and foremost would like to thank Jonathan Yamakami, the graphic designer of the book, who stood by over years, sharing fonts and ideas and layouts and visions with us as we sort of rambled along, gathering material, as Maria said, going through rather hard passages of life, many deadlines, many changes, and hardship and wonderfulness too over 8 years. I also would like to add our profound thanks to the dedicated, amazing individuals who have worked with Enchanted Lion over the years watching over the book and caring for it. They are Kate Finney, Mark Drumright, Julie Kwan, Tasha Moorsan, Anna Chalada, as well as an intern we had many years ago named Clement Benek. And finally, I would like to thank Maria with every fiber of my being for the most hopeful, trusting, and lyrical creative collaboration possible. We all know that Maria is brilliant, with a mind as deep as its flashes of insight are strong and bright. But what many of you may not know is that Maria is also enormously, ceaselessly kind. And so the road we traveled together over 8 years was always companionable. Every step of the way, we were shoulder to shoulder in conversation, friendly and full of faith as we went down the road of this book, whatever the differences between us. I want all of you to know this as contributors and as readers, for what it tells you about the rare quality of kindness and unflagging generosity that are enfolded into every page of the book and were right from the start. Maria, thank you. I also would like to join Maria in thanking our amazing contributors for the pleasure the book will give to so many and for the support it will give to our public libraries. Finally, following Faye, a little plea on behalf of the New York Public Library to please remember everyone to never stop supporting our public libraries, which are the true democratic force of our society. For Andrew Carnegie, who bequeathed a fortune to New York City 123 years ago for the establishment of 65 public branch libraries open to all in a city of immigrants, the library symbolized, quote, the bones, the binding sinews, the flesh and heart of any society that could call itself strong. Thank you, everyone, and enjoy the evening.
Our first reader is actually the person who sent the third letter way back when. And the first two letters came from personal friends. And the third letter, when his letter came in, that was the moment where I really came to see that this was something really special that could live in the world and that needed to exist. He is a musician and storyteller who's been telling stories on the radio for a very long time, and in such a way that he has created a whole new cultural aesthetic that has been since replicated and imitated on just about every NPR show and podcast these days. Please welcome Radiolab creator and co-host Jad Abumrad.
Hello, hello. Really excited and honored to be kicking this off. My letter is short. It is about a book. I brought the book. Perhaps I will show it to you. And it goes like this. Dear reader, much of the time I actually hate to read. It's the truth. I get impatient. The information just needs to get in my head fast, and reading takes too long. Shouldn't there be a faster way? After all, letters are just arbitrary squiggles that put together make up words, which are also arbitrary, like why should chaise or chair or kursi be the thing that you're sitting on? It's arbitrary. And so each arbitrary word is like an elaborate husk that the eyes and the brain have to crack open to extract out meaning. It's tedious. Just plug in a cable into the back of my head like Neo. Honestly, I often think this. But the other day I was reminded of what we would lose when the head plug comes along. I was reading a book to my 4-year-old, who, by the way, is now 9. That's how long this project has been going. I was reading a book to my former 4-year-old. It's a book that 52% baffles him and 48% delights him, and it's called Moomintroll, Mimble, and Little Mai. And I heard some applause. I feel you, whoever you are. And it's by a Finnish author, Tove Jansson, who I am now convinced is a towering genius on the level of Einstein. And I brought it. It's right here. It is a kid's book. Let me see if I can multitask and show it to you while I read the letter. Let's see. This may not work. Nothing makes logical sense in this book. The characters are always the same on each page. But on one page, they wander through a forest. On the next page, they are suddenly getting sucked up through the hose of a vacuum cleaner. And then on a subsequent page, they're having tea with hundreds of electric worms. Every page is sort of a whiplash. The only thing that connects one world to the next, besides the fact that Tove Jansson thought them up, is that she cuts holes in every page. You can see sort of the hole right here. There's a big hole. And these are little wormholes that let you peek from within the page you're on forward to the page you're about to be on. Each page contains a portal to the next world. This simple fact accounts for most of his 48% of delight. As we turned the pages and slipped through one portal after another, and finally got to the final page, I thought, in a way, he's become a new person now. He is passing into his future self. It occurs to me that every good book is like this. A book, by its very nature, is a self-transcending structure, an experience that carries you from the you that you are now to the you that you will be, which obviously is a process that never ends. And so when we get to the end of the book, we go back to the beginning and we read it again. Yours, Jad Abumrad.
Our next reader is a poet, a native of Queens, New York, and also the author of a lovely book of prose that's very kindred to our book called Dear Continuum, Letters to a Poet Crafting Liberation. One of the lovely touches about A Velocity of Being that I enjoyed so much is that many of our contributors used the tiny little bio line as another playful, profound space to converse with young people. And so the bios are not the kind of standard corporate conference Wikipedia bios. A lot of people had fun with them. This is the last line of hers. She is the mother of 3 galaxies who look like daughters. Yeah. Please welcome Mariahadessa Ekere Tallie.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you. It is such a pleasure to be here. Just so grateful to Maria and to Claudia for this, and to you all for being here tonight. That's the illustration for my letter. This is the first time that I've seen it, was 20 minutes ago. So yeah, just a lot of thanks. It's stunning. Okay, so this is my letter. It's long. I heard that they had to shift margins to make it fit on the page. So much for being a poet. Dear future and present, we have some strange sayings in the English language. I've spent some time reading quotes, proverbs, and aphorisms from people all over the world. The sayings can deliver powerful life lessons in beautiful language, like this one, which is my favorite. If we stand tall, it's because we stand on the shoulders of our ancestors. That's a West African proverb. No one knows its exact origins, but sayings tell a great deal about what a people hold dear. I tend to think this saying would never gain popularity in the US or anywhere in the Western world without a massive cultural shift. Think about it. The myth of the all-powerful individual who succeeds on sheer will alone is so prevalent here that the idea that people who you've never seen could be responsible for your good fortune would seem ridiculous. But in some places, it's normal for ancestors to be celebrated. And there, it wouldn't be a stretch to imagine that those long-gone people on the other side might be rooting for you to succeed on this side. One of the oddest American sayings is, "Curiosity killed the cat." What does it mean when a culture says this? It means stay in your place. Keep your head down. Don't ask questions. Stick with what you know. If it's different, leave it alone. It means don't cross the border. Don't color outside the lines. Stay put, because wherever your curiosity takes you could be dangerous. Here come books to the rescue. Books with their covers and pages beckoning. Bring your curiosity. It's welcome here. Books show us people who pray another way, speak a language we haven't heard, wear clothing and hairstyles we've never imagined, eat food we don't see in our supermarkets. And books. Books show us all we have in common, surrounding us with community we didn't know we needed, showing us there is no other. Books let us know we're not the center of the universe. The universe has many centers. I looked up curiosity. It means a desire to know and learn, inquisitive. An old meaning is accomplished with skill or ingenuity. For my ancestors in this country, a desire to know and learn often meant punishment or even death. Maybe curiosity did kill the cat. But the spirit of who I am and who we are has never died. In fact, it's contained in something my mother says. If someone tells her curiosity killed the cat, she responds, satisfaction brought him back. If my ancestors weren't curious in the oldest sense of the word, I certainly wouldn't be here. So my advice to you is the same I give to my daughters. Keep asking questions, color outside the lines, draw your own pictures, draw your own maps, create your own legends. I wish you joy on your quest. 1, Mariahadessa Ekere Tallie.
Our next reader is a novelist, essayist, poet, journalist. He hosts the wonderful Dear Reader series here at the Ace Hotel in New York. Please welcome Alexander Chee.
I love my illustrations so much. Are we all going to say that? I think probably. I truly do. All right, here's my letter. Dear reader of tomorrow and today, when I was your age, I had an agreement with my mother. Whenever she went shopping, she left me at a bookstore or a library. Wherever we were in the world, that was our arrangement. And it made us both happy. As a result, I didn't complain about how long it took her to shop. If anything, when she came to get me, even though I loved her, I was a little sad. They called me a bookworm when I was your age. I taught myself to read and walk at the same time so I could read more while I walked to school. My mother was always telling me I was going to ruin my eyes by reading so much, but I'm still the only one in my family who doesn't need glasses. It may be I even strengthened my eyes. I started reading so much back then because we had just moved to Maine, and I had wanted us to stay in Guam. Maine seemed hard and cold and hopeless compared to the beautiful South Pacific island with warm seas and colorful fish that we had left behind. And while there was no way for me to return, in books, I found doors to other worlds besides the one around me, and many other lives. Pretty soon, I was sneaking away to read, and it was because of each of these books I loved, felt like a present, left behind for me by a stranger who somehow knew exactly how I felt. I learned gradually to love Maine as much as Guam, but I read now for the same reasons I read then, to feel less alone. But I read for more than that. Reading teaches me the answers to problems I haven't had yet, or to problems I didn't even know how to describe. And when I feel less alone with what troubles me, it is easier to find solutions. A book to me is like a friend, a shelter, advice, an argument with someone who cares enough to argue with me for a better answer than the one we both already have. Books aren't just a door to another world. Each book is a part of a door to the whole world, a door that always has more behind it, which is why I still can't think of anything I'd rather do more than read. Yours truly, Alexander Chee.
Our next reader is a musician, one of my favorite musicians, and also one of the kindest humans I know. She is going to read us her letter, which is one of the most bookish letters that in the book, you'll see why. And then she's going to perform a song from her new project, which is a musical called Row, about Tori Murden McClure, who is kind of the Amelia Earhart of boat and paddle. She is the first American and the first woman of any nationality to row solo across the Atlantic. Please welcome Dawn Landes.
Hello. Hi. Dear young reader, when I was a 19-year-old undergrad, I applied for a job at a coffee shop in the West Village. I was fired 2 days later for lingering too long while spreading cream cheese. Across the street, I spotted a help wanted sign in the window of my favorite bookstore. Thus began my 4-year employment at Unoppressive, Non-Imperialist Bargain Books, the store's real name. It's on Carmine Street, by the way. By day, I'd tackle Plato and Rousseau in the classroom. By night, I'd alphabetize the Blake section of the store. After my sophomore year at NYU, I made the difficult decision to stop attending university. I was an A student and loved my classes, but I couldn't justify the expense. I wanted to be a songwriter. How would I ever pay off the loans? It was a good decision. The bookstore became my classroom, the authors my teachers. I started with the songwriters, biographies of Bob Dylan and Woody Guthrie, prose by Patti Smith. Smith referenced Blake, whom critics compared to Rumi. I added them all to my mounting syllabus. It felt like a treasure hunt. I missed the back and forth of a discussion group, but found so much overlap in the books themselves. These writers were all influenced by each other. Their works and ideas seemed to be having a conversation all their own. Moving down the shelves, each section heading became an introductory course: poetry beside philosophy, religion across the hall from social conflict. I studied R. Crumb and Rembrandt, anime and the Impressionists. The art section was a target for neighborhood thieves, and I watched over it like a hawk from my perch at the register. As time went on, I took more and more pride in the small shop. When I locked up at night, the keys felt heavy in my pocket. I didn't receive a diploma from the bookstore, but I did become a songwriter. Hidden in the spines of those books were inspirations for songs, lessons, and maps for the future. All I had to do was join the conversation. Thanks. Now I feel much more comfortable on this microphone over here. So as Maria said, I'm going to sing a song from a musical I've been working on. And she asked me to sing a literary song, and this musical is based on a memoir. And the subject of the musical is a very avid reader. She's actually the president of a university now in Louisville, Kentucky, where I'm from. And so in the musical, whenever she encounters storms on the sea, I set Whenever it's coming. Whenever she encounters a storm, I set whatever she's reading at the time to music. So the first storm, she's reading Moby Dick. Truly, she actually read that. And second storm's Hamlet. And the big storm at the end of the show, she's reading King Lear. So this is the King Lear storm. Contending with the elements that blow the earth into the sea, or swell the curled water now and flood the land for all to see. Tearing at my whitened hair, ripped by the wind with blinding rage, caught in the fury of its blast as I outroar the wind and rain. In my hour of darkness here, I see a burning sky.
Let the fire of Hades come for me, stare me in the eye. In my hour of darkness I rise, facing the great wide helplessness side. Rise, 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 rise. Low winds crack your cheeks, rage, blow, you cataracts and hurricanos spout. Till you've drenched our steeples, drown the cocks, you sulphurous and thought-executing fires, vaunt couriers to oak-cleaving thunderbolts, singe my white head, and thou, all-shaking thunder, strike flat the thick rotundity of the world. Crack nature's molds, all Germans spill at once, that make ingrateful man. A mood to match the weather now, I strike at lightning, spit at rain, bellow and echo to the storm. I'll die before you win again. Ooh, 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 ooh. Thank you. Thanks, Maria and Claudia. Thank you so much.
Our next reader is the Senior Curator of Architecture and Design at the Museum of Modern Art. She puts on some of MoMA's most popular and revolutionary shows like Design in the Elastic Mind, Talk to Me, Design in the Communication Between People and Objects. She thinks very deeply and widely about design as a state and force of being. And she is also one of my oldest, meaning longest, friends in New York. Please welcome Paola Antonelli.
She's gonna get so many hugs tonight, we're gonna wear her down. I say good evening to you, and I say ciao to my young readers. So, ciao. There is nothing better than a book so engrossing you can't wait to get back to and into it. When I was small, all books were just like that. Anything with a binding. My mom used to catch me reading the yellow pages with abandon. And before I could even read, I pretended to, bobbing my head ever so slightly up and down, the text evidently coming at me in waves. There is a picture of me, actually of my tush, taken at a children's party. Except I was not really part of the party. I used to get really shy and insecure, and I often needed to run away and be alone. I remembered that day I went into a bedroom with a book. And I was lying on the bed, on my tummy, a leg up, dangling, reading the book, happy as a clam. It might have even been my party. And somebody found my hideaway, opened the door, and snapped. To this day, I still read a lot. Like when I was 6, 12, 25, and 39, I still need to run away. I read whenever I need to feel safe, whenever I want to feel warm or cool, whenever I need a pause, whenever I need to forget boredom, pain, urgent tasks, and anxiety, and whenever I have time. I read on the subway, and sometimes I even use the book as an excuse to keep my gaze low and sneak peeks at my fellow riders' shoes. On the treadmill, in the bathroom, next to my husband Larry, by the Hudson River. I'm so happy books exist. Warmly, Paola.
So I mentioned earlier that the first two letters were from personal friends. They were my friends Neil Gaiman and Amanda Palmer, who are married, and unfortunately neither of them could be here tonight, not even in this town, not even on this continent. But we have a little hack in the program tonight. Reading Neil's letter is the artist who illustrated it, who is one of the most beloved and memorable and distinctive visual voices in picture books today. She has also created one of the most recognizable New York subway posters that you might recall, and is also the author of a lovely book that I would say maybe for grown-ups called Missed Connections, where she takes real Craigslist missed connections and illustrates them, and it's this wonderfully tender serenade to love and chance, which are kind of the same thing in the end. Please welcome Sophie Blackall.
Oh, hello. I had the honor of illustrating Neil Gaiman's letter and the pleasure of reading it. He's a lot busier than I am. He begins, "Dear person reading this," which actually is me, so. A writer can fit a whole world inside a book. Really, you can go there. You can learn things while you're away. You can bring them back to the world you normally live in. You can look out of another person's eyes, think their thoughts, care about what they care about. You can fly, you can travel to the stars, you can be a monster or a wizard or a god, you can be a girl, you can be a boy. Books give you worlds of infinite possibility. All you have to do is be interested enough to read that first page. Somewhere there is a book written just for you. It will fit your mind like a glove fits your hand, and it's waiting. Go and look for it. Neil Gaiman.
So one absolutely wonderful and heartening thing about this project has been the kind of Rube Goldberg machine of generosity from a lot of our contributors who have connected us with people we were trying to reach or people they thought would be great additions to the book. But no one has done that more than Neil Gaiman, who is one of the most generous humans you will ever meet. He connected us with Ursula K. Le Guin, who is sadly one of 4 contributors we lost during the course of this project. And in fact, her piece in the book is, as far as I know, her last published piece. What a bittersweet honor. And the same for one of our other contributors, the wonderful, greatly missed poet, J.D. McClatchy. And yeah, please a big applause for Sandy. And actually, his husband, Chip Kidd, who's here with us tonight and who illustrated his letter, just told me that it's also Sandy's last published piece. So what an honor. But Neil also connected us with our eldest contributor, and in a very improbable way, we were sitting down to dinner one night. He had just come from the airport, and he comes in very animated. He had been to Florida to visit his cousin, Helen. Now, Helen is a Holocaust survivor who lost her parents in the Holocaust, but she and her 3 sisters survived. And they came to America not speaking a word of English. And Helen ended up being an English literature professor for 22 years. She's also one of the 4 people who helped build the Holocaust Memorial in DC. But that day, she had told him a story that he didn't know. She had told him a story about a particular book that literally saved her life and the lives of a few other young women in the concentration camp where they were. And so I said to him, we have to have her write this letter. And so very graciously, he connected me with Helen. She wrote this letter, and to this day, she just turned 100 earlier this year. And she's a voracious reader. When I went to visit her with Amanda a couple years ago, she pulled out a Whitman volume and read for us from Leaves of Grass. And I hear from her often, writing back to my newsletter, commentary on some Camus piece or something or other. She's really wonderful. So it is a real pleasure to have her read her letter for us. This is Helen Fagan.
Dear friend, could you imagine a world without access to reading, learning, to books? At 21, I was forced into Poland's World War II ghetto, where being caught reading anything forbidden by the Nazis meant at best hard labor, at worst death. There I conducted a clandestine school offering Jewish children a chance at the essential education denied them by their captors. But I soon came to feel that teaching these sensitive young souls Latin and mathematics was cheating them of something far more essential. What they needed wasn't dry information, but hope. The kind that comes from being transported into the dream world of possibility. One day, as if guessing my thoughts, one girl beseeched me, "Could you please tell us a book? Please." I had spent the previous night reading Gone with the Wind in Polish translation, one of a few smuggled books circulated among trustworthy people via an underground channel, on their word of honor to read it only at night in secret. No one was allowed to keep a book over longer than one night. That way, if reported, the book would have already changed hands by the time the searchers arrived. I had read Gone with the Wind from dusk until dawn, and it still illuminated my own dream world. So I invited these young dreamers to join me. As I told them the book, they shared the loves and trials of Red Butler and Scarlett O'Hara, of Ashley and Melanie Lucas. For that magical hour, we had escaped into a world not of murder, but of manners and hospitality. All the children's faces had grown animated with new vitality. A knock at the door shattered our shared dream world. As the class silently exited, a pale green-eyed girl turned to me with a tearful smile. "Thank you so very much for this journey into another world. Could we please do it again soon?" I promised we would, although I doubted we would have many more chances. She put her arms around me and I whispered, "So long, Scarlett. I think I would rather be Melanie," she answered, although Scarlett must have been so much more beautiful. As events in the ghetto took their course, most of my fellow dreamers fell victims to the Nazis. Of the 22 pupils in my secret school, only 4 girls survived the Holocaust. The pale green-eyed girl was one of them. Many years later, I was finally able to locate her and we met in New York. One of my life's greatest rewards will remain the memory of our meeting when she introduced me to her husband as the source of my hopes and my dreams in times of total deprivation and dehumanization. There are times when dreams sustain us more than facts. To read a book and surrender to a story is to keep our very humanity alive. Sincerely, Helen Fagan.
What an honor to hear from Helen. Our next reader is a composer who weaves geopolitical and human rights themes into his music. He is a native New Yorker, and he volunteers at the LGBT Community Center every single Sunday. Please welcome Mohammed Fairouz.
Well, what we just saw was the very embodiment of the breath of life, so I think it is just so fundamentally important to think about the aspects of memory and remembrance that reading can bring us. Dear friend, may I share a memory from when I was little? One afternoon, I was sitting on my mother's lap, reading out loud from a book about a young prince. There came a moment in the story when the prince began to sing, so naturally I looked at the words on the page and started to sing. My mother was surprised by the new melody I had created. She asked, "Where did you find that tune?" I pointed to the text on the page. I said, "It's right there." At that age, I imagined that everybody reading this same book would hear the same tune that I was hearing. But I was inventing music. Little did I know that I would grow up to be a composer and that making music would become both my livelihood and my joy. Now let me share another story that I cherish from my upbringing, a more distant one. 1,400 years ago, in the deserts of Arabia, a meditative prophet named Muhammad had a vision of the angel Gabriel, who came to him with a message: read, or in the original Arabic, ikra. This was the first word of the Quran, which means the reading or the recitation. In the years following this prophet's death, his followers built a commonwealth, the first in human history based on ideas and not creed, where they contributed to every branch of knowledge, from algebra to optics and medicine to music. Countless things we have today would not exist without their contributions. That includes space stations, glasses, aspirin, your iPad. They were able to do this because they were inspired to seek out the power that comes with being able to read for themselves. You deserve the same power, to have your imagination unleashed and be carried across the galaxy in the space of a sentence. Read, whether your path is to build a commonwealth or find the lifelong companionship of music. Every path is possible with that power. It all begins with one word, the very same word that was delivered to an ancient prophet on the wings of an archangel. Ikra.
Our next reader is the author of many children's books and a few for grown-ups, including the beautiful recent memoir, Little Panic: Dispatches from an Anxious Life. She is also the host of New York's beloved long-running music and reading series, Happy Ending, when some of our most celebrated local writers have read new work for the first time. And she is one of my dearest friends. Please welcome Amanda Stern.
Hello. I will be the night's smallest reader. So the week that I met Mariah, she asked me to write a letter for this book. So tonight feels a bit like our anniversary or a reunion. So thank you all for coming to that. Dear you, you can't remember being born or the moment you first laughed, yet these episodes live inside you as vital contributors to the anthology of your inner self. Every good and bad experience leaves a rubbing inside you, an imprint of feeling whose impact doesn't require memory or articulation to matter. Your deepest self is a mural of feeling patterns running down your veins across your heart, and they shrink or expand correspondent to your attention, nourishment, and empathy. Books send signals from their feeling patterns to yours, teaching you to identify what you've not been able to name. Follow their flares. Just like you, a book has an interior life. And just like you, it only ever wants to be known. Each of your efforts to connect freshens your best traces. Through a book, an author offers her own painted pulses, trusting you'll care and hoping you'll recognize its match inside you. To accept something meaningful from a stranger you'd never ask for in person is a privilege as rare to receive as to extend. Every reader should behave like a book, pushing others towards growth, aiming to deepen the most enduring relationship, the one we have with ourselves. Your friend in Brooklyn, Amanda.
This next call is going to be coming from inside the house. Our next reader is the creator of the library's beloved Live from the NYPL series of conversations with authors, artists, musicians. And in fact, after 14 years of making the lions roar, as he likes to say, we are losing him to warmer climes, but tonight is his last night on this stage where he has been many times in a very different capacity. Please welcome Paul Holdengräber.
Good evening. I had to run up on that stage because that's how I've done it for all these years. Many thanks, Mariah, for this privilege, and indeed this is my true swan song, and I'm extremely happy that Myra Kalman illustrated my letter. I want to very briefly say that 14 years ago, one of my favorite events ever at the library was when Myra Kalman, together with Nico Muley, did an opera in the reading room based on the elements of style. It's great, no? I mean, it was just fantastic, and they were accompanied by an orchestra called the Needless Word Orchestra, where Isaac Mizrahi was hitting on an egg beater. It was just fantastic. The words of Helen Fagan touched me extremely deeply, and I must add a little footnote to it. Forgive me, digression is my mode, but Helen Fagan spoke about Gone with the Wind And my father, who spent the war years in Haiti, having escaped, becoming a farmer in Haiti, the way he learned English was by finding the only book he could find in the library in Port-au-Prince, which was Gone with the Wind. And he underlined every word, and that's how he learned English, and I'm told that I inherited his accent. Dear reader, Nikolai Gogol in The Overcoat describes a civil servant and scribe, Akaki Akakievich, who saw nothing but his own neat lines written out in an even hand, and only if a hoarse muzzle, appearing from goodness knows where, came to his shoulder and blew a gale on his cheek from its nostrils, did he become aware of the fact that he was not in the middle of a line, but rather in the middle of the street. A library may be a safer place to read and feel protected. Gogol evokes the pleasures of being fully immersed and lost in words. How amazing that scratches on a page continue to transport us to remote places, and more importantly, away from ourselves and into another world, another person's landscape. I am another. I now walk in somebody else's shoes, however uncomfortable. I am one of the Three Musketeers. I am Pinocchio. I am the idiot. I am Don Quixote. I am Le Misanthrope. I am the Mad Hatter. I am Lolita. I am Little Red Riding Hood and the Wolf. I am Huckleberry Finn. I am Madame Bovary. I am Anna Karenina. I am Bartleby the Scrivener. I am Holden Caulfield. I am Robinson Crusoe. I am the Hunchback of Notre Dame. I am Casanova. My shoes will never fit me again. Yours, Paul Holdengräber.
Our next reader is a poet, playwright, songwriter, founder of Project Voice, which is a wonderful initiative devoted to using spoken word poetry to inspire, empower young people. Please welcome Sarah Kay.
Hello, everyone. So my letter is a poem, but before I share the poem, I wanted to tell you that the person who made me a reader is my mother. And my mother was a very attentive mother in my childhood at all times, except for when she was reading. And a game that my brother and I used to play was to wait and watch until she got to the last 10 pages of a book, and then run over and be like, Mom, I need you. Mom, I need you right now. Mom, this is really important. And there would be no chance of getting her back from the world of the book. And when her mother was still alive, my grandmother, she used to love to tell this story about the fact that my mom is the oldest of 5, and that meant that it was a very loud and chaotic household. And the place where she would escape to was books. And something that would always happen was that my grandmother would be moving through the house and she would trip because my mother had perched herself in the doorway on the floor with a book. And no one would notice or hear her because she was silently reading in the doorframe. And when she got underfoot, she would get thrown out of the house. And so she would scurry up a tree in the front yard and sit on a tree branch and hide up there and read. And when I was a kid, I went to my grandmother's house and the tree was still in the front yard. And I climbed up the tree, and in the topmost branches was my mother's initials carved in the upper branch. And so I parked myself there and became a reader myself. So this poem is great places to read books. Also, this poem is for a very young reader, because I think you're never too young for poetry, and it's a great challenge to try to write poems for very young people. It's lovely to read in the bathtub, but be careful the book doesn't slip. You can read while you sit in a door frame, but don't cause someone to trip. You can read while under the covers with the help of a secret flashlight. You can climb up a tree and read there, as long as you're not scared of heights. You can read in a tent if you're camping, or out in the woods on a hike, or read while you sip hot cocoa by a fireplace, if you'd like. You can read on a bus or a subway, but make sure you don't miss your stop. You can read while you swing in a hammock, but don't swing too hard or you'll plop. You can read while you lounge in a beach chair, wear an SPF that is strong. You can read while you sit on the toilet, but don't sit there too long. You can read by yourself in silence or read out loud with a friend. You can go see your local librarian and ask what books they'd recommend. Thanks.
Our next reader is a technologist, journalist, author of the wonderful book Hamlet's Blackberry, and a research scientist at the MIT Media Lab. Please welcome William Powers.
I think I'm the tallest person to read tonight. Hello, everyone. I wanted to say that I love it when when someone tells you they have this crazy, really like outlandish idea, and they're really determined to make it happen, and then they kind of disappear and you don't hear about it for a long time, and it sort of like seems to have vanished. And I actually work with a lot of people at the Media Lab who do this. And then they return one day and there it is, and it's actually not only as fabulous as they promised, but better and more amazing. And I feel that this book is that. It's astonishing. I just am seeing it tonight for the first time, but I can't believe how wonderful it is and beautiful. I love my illustration, and I'm so honored to be part of this. I would like to dedicate my reading to someone who had one of those ideas and delivered it, which is Claudia Bedrick's father, Peter, who founded Enchanted Lion Books with his amazing wife and partner, Muriel Bedrick, who's here in the front row. And they had a vision for children's books that was about so many things. It was about, obviously, beautiful stories. It was about cross-cultural storytelling. It was about the book itself being exquisite. And not only did they carry it through, but Claudia has appeared on the scene years ago now. Peter's been dead for 14 years and took it to a new level. So it's wonderful to be part of that story, and I'm so thrilled we're all here for an Enchanted Lion book. So this is my story, my letter. Dear fellow person, when I was very young, I believed I was an alien creature. It was clear to me that I'd been born on another planet and sent here by mistake or as some sort of cruel joke. Feeling different from others is a common experience, of course. There's even a word for it, alienated. But it's one thing to feel like an alien and another to truly know you are one. You see, on the outside, I looked and acted just like the humans around me, but inside was another me that was nothing like the outside me and totally different from everyone else. The inside me was funny and weird. It had magical thoughts and visions, so wild they couldn't be expressed in words. The inside me also felt things, loves, hurts, confusions, more strongly than it seemed others did. These unearthly feelings were, I knew, inappropriate and possibly illegal. Lying in bed, I imagined what it would be like to return to my home planet. Up there, my inside self would be totally normal. It could play and laugh with all the other inside selves. We wouldn't need our outside selves at all. We'd throw them away like the clothes you shed at the beach on a summer day. Then I started reading books. And in books, I discovered that my inside self had a name. It was called a soul. Even more amazing, it turned out that other people had souls too. From then on, anytime I felt lost, a stranger in the world, I would sit quietly with a book and be reminded that I wasn't the only one. That's why books were invented, so our souls could talk to each other. Books help our inside selves meet up and become friends so we can find our way together through life. That's why we love them so much. William Powers, thank you.
Wow, Bill, you are tall. Our next reader is a writer, journalist, former political advisor to Al Gore and Bill Clinton. Her book, The Beauty Myth, has become a cultural classic, and she herself has become one of the leading feminist voices of our time. Please welcome Naomi Wolf.
Thank you. It's such an extraordinary honor to be here with not only such luminaries, but I was thinking as all these extraordinary thoughts were being shared about how lucky we are that we get to forget how radical it is to sit in a library like this and freely exchange ideas. I've been working on censorship and the origins of censorship, and around the world, there are so many places to this day, and even in our own country, resurgent instincts to censor and squelch, control, suppress this free flow of words and language, because whenever tyrants want to gain ascendancy, they go after exactly the vehicles that have been described here because of exactly the emotions that we've heard tonight. Openness, discovery, affiliation with people who seem superficially so different. These are radical, radical connections. And I just want to acknowledge Mariah, who brings so much love and tenderness to the task of communicating the thoughts that she does, the voices that she brings or re-brings to life, and also the librarians at the public library, because librarians seem so quiet, but they're in fact the most radical of all. So thank you. So this is my letter. Dear person, why read? Because you have only one life, but reading gives you many lives. Because you have only one personality, but when you read a book, you can be inside another mind and heart. Because experiencing elegance of language is one of the greatest pleasures of consciousness. Reading lets you be quiet in a chaotic world and commune with amazing people who happen to be dead now, so not too easy to connect with otherwise. Reading startles you. Reading upsets you. Reading takes apart your world and expectations and rearranges them. Imagine the last few years without the books you have loved. It would be a much sadder, flatter experience of living. We read as a form of faith. Naomi, thank you.
Our next reader is a musician who hails from Jamaica, Queens. She's also going to read her letter and perform a song inspired by one of the great literary humanistic voices of the past century. She has devoted her life to music and activism around human rights and environmental justice. She has performed for leaders like the Dalai Lama and Nelson Mandela on stages ranging from the Nomad Women's Festival in the Sahara Desert to Carnegie Hall. And her music has taken me through some of the hardest parts of my life. Please welcome Morley.
Thank you so much, Maria, and everyone. I feel your presence is such a gift to be together tonight, to breathe, to listen together in this gentleness. I feel the medicine of the evening. I'm very grateful. I used to play on the Lions outside. And I remember one year we came, at some point we came, and I went to go play on the Lions, and somebody came and said, "Oh, young lady, you can't do that." And that's when they started saying you're not allowed to do that. But I don't know when that actually started, but I wonder if it's probably not legal to play on the Lions anymore because lawsuits and stuff. But it used to make me feel larger than life. Dear friend, I thought I was alone in believing in the magic of human possibility. Alone in the empathy I felt for the trees in the forest that get chopped down without ceremony or question as to how it will affect the birds that live there, and the wind that danced through the branches and leaves every change of season. When I picked up 2 books of poems, one by Langston Hughes and the other Mary Oliver, all that changed for me. I was able to see how I was not alone, not only in my feelings, but in the believing that everyone, including nature, has a birthright to be respected and free. I learned that what I envisioned for humanity had been envisioned many, many times before I was even born. This validated me in some personal way and gave me permission to keep leaning into love and justice as I grew up. When we learn about each other, we are less afraid of each other. I'm thankful to those who have come before and those who are now actively providing us maps to get to where we need to go as a human family. We are all connected, and our freedom to love, learn, laugh, dream, dance is all tied up in the freedom of everyone and every living thing around us. Love, Morley. Thank you. This is a song that is inspired by James Baldwin's essay on the creative process. Yeah, and it's a really, if you guys, has anybody read that essay on the creative process? If you haven't, just as soon as you leave here, Google it. It's a page and a half long. And in it, he talks directly to the artist. And he talks about how the society, by its very nature, wants to destroy the very thing it needs to survive, and that is the artist. In our beautiful self-destructive nature, he talks about that. Take it easy, love. It's older than you will ever be. This lover's war between an artist and society. In James Baldwin's words, find inspiration. My love, you've been chosen to go where most must avoid. That place of utter aloneness where you can be
destroyed. Little wing, you've been chosen to blaze through the wilderness of your mind. Illuminate the darkness, bring love and understanding to mankind. And they're gonna try to kill you 1,000 times, but don't you pay them any mind. Shake the system from inside. You're forever born, my little wing. You will never die. You're forever born, my little wing. You will never die. Have compassion for yourself. People in the nation are busy lying to themselves now. But if they understood this better, they'd do less damage. Yes, they do less damage to themselves. And you're gonna fly 1,000 skies, opening doors, opening minds. Shake the system, shake it from inside. You're forever born, my little wing. You will never die. Do what lovers do. Reveal the beloved in you. Yes, do what lovers do. Reveal the beloved to you. For this is a lover's war. This is what you're made for. This is a lover's war. And this is what you're made for. You're gonna fly 1,000 skies, opening doors and opening minds. Shake the system, shake it from both sides. You're forever born, my little wing. You will never die. So do what lovers do. Reveal the beloved in you. Thank you.
What a mighty ray of soul sunshine. So here's a little meta story about the project, another Neil Gaiman story. Quite early on, Claudia and I had a working title for this. It was Letters to a Young Reader, after our beloved Rilke's Letters to a Young Poet. So one day, Neil and I are making salad, and we're standing in his kitchen chopping cucumbers. And he's giving me relationship advice. Neil Gaiman's a fantastic giver of relationship advice, on the record. And as you might know, the best way to have a conversation with an English person about something serious, particularly an English male, is by standing side by side and looking at something other than each other. So there we are, chopping our respective cucumbers and having this very serious conversation. And when he's done giving me advice, I decide I'll float this title by him that I'm really excited about. And I, tell him what it is, Letters to a Young Reader. And Neil stops chopping his cucumber, takes a moment, and says in his very polite British way, which I will not try to imitate, "That is an excellent subtitle." And of course, in Neil speak, that means that is a terrible title. So I kind of, begin despairing, and I spend the next 2 years trying to find the perfect title, thinking that it should come from one of the letters. So I'm obsessively reading and rereading these letters, hoping that a phrase jumps out at me that is the perfect title. And nothing. Everything's too literal, too abstract, too long, too short. Nothing feels right. Eventually, the time comes for us to close the letters portion of the book, to stop taking in any more letters, because we still have the entire second half of matching each with an artist and having the artist do their work, and that would take years, unbeknownst to us, many more than we thought. So we're about to close. We have closed, and just around that time, I met someone, actually through the book world, through a book review, who has since become a very dear friend, but who I instantly recognized then as just an incredibly inspiring person in the world. She is an astrophysicist, an author, beautiful lyrical writer of both fiction and nonfiction, director of sciences at Brooklyn's Pioneer Works, and she wrote a letter. The letter came in. Claudia kindly allowed me to take in one extra last one. And out of that letter, miraculously jumped out what became the title of this book. Please welcome Janna Levin.
Maria, God, I feel like I've known Maria my whole life. It's hard to believe it's only a couple years. Maria gets me to do things nobody else can get me to do, like write a letter. and I have to express my patience, her patience with me, which I'm grateful for, because I'm always late and forgetting to meet the deadline. I almost forgot about the event tonight. It's really, so thank you, Maria, for giving me really inspiring parameters to think about all the time. And I want to say how much I love my art pairing. I love it so much that I decided to actually read from the book so I can look at it at the same time. Dear reader, I don't remember my childhood books well, but there are still some stories I've always known. I've known for as long as I can remember, is the saying. I do remember reading to my son, Gibson, how silent he became, this rambunctious, willful boy. He'd settle into the crook of my arm, proving evolution designed that specific shape in my body just for that purpose. I'd cradle him while we both faced the hard pages of the book, hard, colorful pages of the book that I don't remember from my own childhood. He'd soften and settle instantly as though hypnotized, reassuringly heavy, transfixed on the page, quiet in anticipation of the words warm in his hair. My mother taught me to read, and I don't mean that she taught me to sound out my syllables, although she may have done that too. I mean she taught me how to read. The book that stands out in my memory at the cusp of my exit from childhood is Beloved. She saw layers in Beloved, detected meanings I missed, projected some of herself onto those characters. So I read the book again to see more of what she saw. I could hear her voice on the second reading, slowing the book to a different pace. Sometimes I hear such rhythm in the phrasing of prose that I've tried to borrow melodies, steal them outright. I've tried to write about math with the energy of Cannery Row. I've tried to write about a colossal scientific machine with the tenderness of the human stain. I never borrow words, not intentionally at least, but I borrow rhythms. My son's first words were a rhythmic conglomerate. Well, why, sir? He'd start strong but rise to a roar, wow, bringing the song back down to the quieter growl, arr. As he practiced the notes, the expression sharpened, but only slightly, barely enough to resolve in our minds. He focused on me, joyous, just mystified by my lack of comprehension. Where the wild things are. He sat motionless, staring, imploring me to finally understand. We howled as I repeated triumphant, and he repeated, and I repeated, where the wild things are. I can't predict which books Gibson will remember. A prodigious musician in his preteens, well, he was, again, back then. He only reads biographies about Jimi Hendrix and Robert Johnson, Howlin' Wolf and Janis Joplin, but his ear for music, inherited entirely from his father, so wildly exceeds mine that now he teaches me how to listen to songs, understands layers that I missed, and sometimes I can hear what he hears. Books look static and quiet, but they are not. They exude a pressure. They have a melody and stride, but they are only effective when balanced by the pressure of the reader, when they can reflect as well as transmit, when they elongate or quicken according to the velocity of the reader. You, reader, define the experience of the book. Every book you read could only be read in precisely that way by you. Yours, Janna. Thank you.
Our final reader of the night has been a New Yorker staff writer for more than 30 years. He is a real epicenter of the New York literary world and one of the finest essayists I have ever read. Please welcome Adam Gopnik.
Thank you, Maria. And before I say anything else, I just would ask you all to join me in thanking Maria and Claudia for everything they've done to. And like so many of my colleagues, I feel terribly inadequate to end this evening, given the quality and beauty of what my colleagues and friends have read to you. Like so many of them, though, this is the first time I've seen my letter since I sent it in 8 years ago. When I by the way, the one thing, Maria, that you didn't mention to me is that we were supposed to be creative with our bios, because mine reads as though I'm applying for tenure. I list all my degrees for some reason in it. But when I read it an hour and a half ago, for the first time in 8 years, I was at first annoyed with myself because it wasn't sufficiently political, as I wished it would be at this moment. I had written it in the early Obama, and here I was going to read it in what I hope is late Trump. Yeah, But in that time, our awareness and our sense of urgency and of an ongoing national emergency, I think, has pervaded us all. But then as I sat there and listened to what everyone had to say tonight, I was stunned, because what everyone said, without exception, about why we read, why we love to read, it wasn't the didactic function of literature or the polemical function of writing or the snob function, read Proust and people will think better of you. Everyone, without exception, all these amazing people coming from radically different backgrounds and experiences, all spoke about the vicarious function of literature, or if that's too sordid a name for it, the empathetic function of literature, the way that books bring us out of ourselves and put us in touch with people of fundamentally different experiences, with minds unlike our own, with cultures and faiths different than our own. My friend Paul explained that he's really Lolita, which is a complicated idea. And all of us, and may I just, one more thing too, Paul Holdengräber for 14 years has made this place a place of vitality and dynamism, and I just want to thank him for that again too. We will miss him in New York. But everyone talked about the power of literature to connect us to people who are long dead, to connect us to people unlike ourselves, the power of books to be the sympathetic mucilage of a disparate and plural society. And in that way, I thought everyone is making the most profound political statement they could possibly make about the necessities of rejecting the narrow fierceness of tribalism and welcoming the beautiful inclusiveness of books. Here's what I wrote. Dear friend, books won't make you a better person. Some of the worst people in the world have loved books. Books will teach you stuff, but so will YouTube videos and science documentaries. What books alone can give you is the feeling that the book is reading you. Books provide the one kind of time travel that works, where you make a wish and actually become a musketeer in Paris or a used car salesman in Pennsylvania. The miracle of a book is that it is just black marks on a white surface, and they make worlds. Or rather, they are the only thing that lets you make worlds and go places that look just the way you want them to look. Someone else will try to tell you that the best books are the ones that take you farthest and show you most. The great thing about literature is that you soon learn that the best writing, expressing the deepest ideas, is the most transporting. Memorize this lie. It is incredibly useful. Repeat it to your teachers. But don't think it's true. I've been transported by very bad books just as far away and as surely by good ones. I can't help but add here, I couldn't help thinking as Helen Fagan told that unbelievably moving story, but what a bad book Gone with the Wind is. And it's a horrible book with a terrible message. And yet it acted as this necessary humanizing connector for these two girls in the worst imaginable situation in human history. That's what books can do, bad books as well as good ones. So read. Read with terrible posture. Read whatever you happen to pick up. Read bad books that hold your attention, and you will find it easier to read good ones that take a bit more work before the leap elsewhere takes place. Read only for pleasure, and you will find that you read for life. Thank you, and good night.
So thank you all for coming to celebrate this project that we all hope will long outlive us all, this atlas of possibility for the land of being drawn from the land of letters. Please stay. There are copies of A Velocity of Being over there. I hope you enjoyed tonight. Thank you and good night.